Charles Hoskinson might have just solved the biggest problem plaguing the crypto and blockchain industry: how to remain confidential and share confidential information, but still do it on chain. This is a big feat, and some others have crashed and burned already in this space. Now, in full transparency, I work for IOG, and I work specifically for the Midnight product. So I could probably share more information on other crypto and other blockchain companies than I can actually share in this video. But what I can share with you is this: that the team working on Midnight are absolutely incredible. Each individual is an absolute rock star. Now, I'm not going to call them out individually, but you can do a LinkedIn search and find them, and you can look at their background and their track record, and let me tell you, they are incredible. Now, what makes this protocol so special? Well, that happens to be its North Star, which is anchored in what's called the ACE principles. And what Charles wants this protocol to do is allow people the freedom of ACE, which stands for association, commerce, and expression. He wants to give people those rights to operate freely in each one of those buckets. So an individual can join a membership or be a part of a group freely, i.e. DAOs. Or they can work on a marketplace and transact freely. Or they can express themselves through their missions and beliefs without persecution. So there's a ton of different use cases that solve real world problems that are facing individuals right now on planet Earth. And the goal is to operate freely in each one of these categories. But why is this so hard? Well, this is extremely hard because the hyper-connected world that we live in actually never gave individuals these types of freedoms. It was never built to allow these types of freedoms. The internet was created to push and share as much data as possible. And through this massive distribution of information, only an afterthought was, well, how do we keep some of this information back? How does some of this information and some of this data remain confidential or remain property of the person or individual sharing it, or the enterprise sharing it? So what ends up happening is now you have a huge challenge, and it creates vulnerabilities and cracks that can later be exploited. So as all of this data is being pushed out, what you're doing now is you're encrypting some of this data. But if data is now being shared but encrypted, that is a crack in the architecture that could then be decrypted and expose the information behind that cloak. So as all of this data is moving, there needs to be a new way to transmit this data, but without pushing all of it outward. So what Midnight does is it leads with confidentiality first, which means developers, enterprises, and end users are able to explore a whole new world of opportunities that was never possible before. And what Midnight does is provide a new paradigm on how developers can build and deploy dApps, specifically confidentiality first dApps, onto the blockchains. Using a novel programming model, developers can now build on a protocol that leads with users protecting their confidential information. Developers are going to be able to write on this using several languages, but it's going to start with TypeScript, which allows a whole swath of developers to come onto this protocol and be able to build on top of it. And what is the magic behind this protocol? So what is the secret sauce underneath it? The platform will use zero-knowledge cryptography and a combination of private and public computation, creating a trustless ecosystem that safeguards sensitive personal and commercial data. So why is Midnight so important right now? Well, in the world where big data and big tech are just taking as much info and data from their customers as possible, even without their consent, it's creating a contention in the marketplace. And just recently, a New York man filed a class action lawsuit against Apple for breaching their own terms and services. So let me just share with you what's going on in this TechCrunch article. So in this TechCrunch article, it says that the researchers examined that Apple's own apps, including App Store, Apple Music, Apple TV, books, and stocks, and found that disabling the settings as well as other privacy controls didn't impact Apple's data collection. So, the App Store, for example, was continuing to track information like what apps the users tapped on, what they searched for, what ads they saw, how long they looked at a given app page, and how the app was discovered, among other things. So even when shutting off and disabling to collect my personal data information, Apple is still taking information that the customer does not want them to have. So this is creating a real problem. And in this dualistic world that we live in, there has to be polarity. So because you have all the data collection over here, and you have what's called privacy over here, and everything in between. So when companies are on the spectrum or are trying to gather as much data as possible, well, in this world, there are going to be organizations created and launched to help users remain private and share confidential information. There just has to be, right? And of course, with all of these two things happening simultaneously, there's going to be regulation jumping in. Unfortunately, in this dualistic world of gathering as much data as possible, in keeping everything completely private, midnight falls somewhere in like the middle to lower spectrum, where they're calling it confidentiality. So you're going to be able to confidentially share information with those people who require it. Not everybody. Just like I am not going to share my bank statements and publish them on the front door of my house. But I'll share them with my banker, I'll share them with my accountant, I'll share them with the person filing my taxes. It keeps the power of what information is going to be shared with the customer. So now here's the exciting thing. What does this mean for new startups? Well, new startups, now they have a choice. They can choose to build applications or dApps that are the traditional method, or they now have the option to build dApps that are confidentiality based. This is huge because there are going to be a ton of users who are interested in this. Think about DAOs or Amazon that doesn't collect your data. Or what about if there was an Amazon that rather than linking buyers and sellers together and Amazon collects all the data, what if there's the Amazon platform and the seller and the buyer decide to transact, and then the buyer decides what information they want to share with the seller? This is huge. So there's so many different applications that could potentially happen with building this new protocol. And developers could potentially build new social platforms where people can express themselves freely without perjury, getting banned, or being targeted on violent acts just for speaking their freedom of expression or their freedom of speech or sharing their beliefs. Now, those are just some examples of what can be built on the personal application or dApp side. But there's a huge implication on what this means for enterprise clients. Enterprise clients would love to work on a blockchain. However, the blockchain is completely open, which some enterprise clients cannot do due to regulation and due to just the inherent nature of their business, like banks or healthcare systems. But now that certain information can be confidential, now this is a huge potential to be adopted by banks, healthcare systems, and other enterprise clients. And like all of these videos, here's some of my thoughts for you. This isn't to point you in one direction or other, but it's just to open up your spectrum of awareness of what is happening so you can make better and informed decisions. So if you're investing in some of these legacy companies like healthcare systems or banks or whatever, make sure you're asking them about their approach or their strategy when adopting blockchain technology, because blockchain is the future. It absolutely is. But what are these firms doing to adopt it? What plans do they have? What teams are they putting in place? What partnerships are they collaborating with that will help them usher this forward? And if you're investing in early stage companies or building your own startup, there might be an opportunity for you to actually capture market share by gathering less data. Isn't that interesting? Building a better business by not going the traditional route. It's all about providing the best value to your customer. And if your customer values transparency and autonomy, you can build a really big business around that, regardless of what you're building. So by sharing, hey, the data is yours, it's not ours, but we will transact in a way that is respectful and honest, and you get to keep your information, but if we can deliver value over here, there is going to be a huge pool of customers who will jump at that. So if you're building a startup, think about that avenue as well. I'm all about it. I'm very bullish on this new paradigm of technology that is giving power back to the individual. Anything that provides more sovereignty for the world is a really good thing. What about you? Do you think this is going to be a good thing? These confidentiality first platforms and protocols? Please share your comments and your thoughts of this new paradigm that's being ushered in the comments, and feel free to hit the like button and subscribe. Feel free to share this video with someone you think would benefit. I'm Alan. Thanks for watching.